Okay, yet again Unto the Breach, turn 23, and look, I'm not feeling well, but it's a dramatic turn, and I expect that will more than compensate for it. So, we'll go through the event list, and then we'll talk through what we're doing, because we are launching our offensive operation against Uruk this turn. So we received Magic Earth Boots from Ulm, which they had promised us, and we paid Earth Gems for. Got one Air Gem for one Nature Gem from Asphodel. We've reached Evocation 3, which gives us things like Fireball. Ulm has claimed the Throne of Ice, which they purchased from us. We summoned Condors, and then we found a number of magic sites. So we searched Gamer, and we found an Air Gem. We searched Furia, and found a Labyrinth of Skulls, which is a Death Gem site. And then did we find anything else? Nope, that was it. Okay, so 2 gems found that turn. I'll take it. Any turn that I find anything, I appreciate. And then there were a series of battles. So Sea Stag late, our Supaya killed the Tritons, as they are wont to do. We suicided our Apu to get a quote on the size of the defensive force. So there it is, Jade Maidens, Jade Sorceresses, Priests. Probably won't get that province, but we wanted to know what was there. We saw Uruk finally kill the monster boars that were besieging their fortress. Unexpected events. Minus unrest plus gold. Look, I'll take a 54 gold. I'll take it. I'm not going to say no to it. And then plus 24 unrest minus 2, plus 24 unrest minus 240 population. Both in the same province, so I guess everything evens out in the end. Then we found 2 scouts. The Ermorian scout was found up here, so in the former Pythian territories. And then the Machakan, same thing. So both of them presumably trying to see how our war with Pythian went. They presumably know because we're patrolling there. But it's good to know who's spying on you, who's attempting to spy on you, and we're starting to get to the point where we can establish more and more patrol groups. Hatu and Runa under an Apu or an Apu Squispe are good patrol groups. They're very, very, very cheap patrol groups. The commander is worth more than an entire stack of the troops combined, which is pretty damn good. So, that was what happened this turn. But the key development this turn is that we are launching War Number 2, which is an offensive operation against Uruk. The reason that we are going ahead and doing this is because, as you can see, Uruk is on man. Ulm is committed to punching them off man and taking this territory for themselves, including this swamp here, which apparently all of these provinces here are gem-rich, which is why, even though this is a small clump of territory, Ulm really wants them. Before someone else comes in and vultures them off Uruk, they'll want to secure them, so they'll be very careful about Vanheim doing so. Vanheim, of course, has eaten most of the former Bandar territories and is besieging Bandar Log, while Vanarus besieges Sleepy Wold and will presumably take Flower Meadow Forest at 107, and that will be the end of Bandar Log. So we're going to get scouts on these positions eventually and make sure that we can see the storming and see what's going on there. So we're committing to a war, which meant I sat down and I thought to myself, okay, how do we beat Uruk? Now we know Uruk knows we're coming because this last turn you can see a bunch of troops here that weren't here before, which tells me they've rush-built troops. So they have cut their infrastructure, cut their mages, and instead they're pumping out a lot of troops and they're moving what they can north. If you look at the sort of troops they're putting out, they've got Iron Warriors, they've got a good group of Maidens of the Moon with Archers and Iron Warriors, more Maidens of the Moon here. So we won't trade efficiently with Uruk's armies. We won't. And if we allow Uruk to fight us, blunt our initial offensive, and continue producing, that will incur a much greater cost than if we first rob them of their ability to operate. So, our doctrine for this war is going to be to take what we can in terms of infrastructure and undefended territory extremely rapidly, and then pivot to collapse onto armies when we see opportunities to safely destroy them. But mostly this is going to be a campaign against rear areas, against infrastructure, and against the Urukian economy, because every gold we deny him is a fraction of a troop that he can't build, and if he can't build the troop, it can't kill more than its gold value in our units. Because now that we have 66 air gems and an air income of 8 per month, we can keep up maximum rate Condor summoning forever. But we can't scale it beyond that. We can't realistically produce even more Condors. You don't get anywhere near as much value if you use a low A value mage. So we're not going to be scaling our production of our primary warfighting tool at this point, which means we want to limit the cost of this war as much as possible. So the campaign I've settled on is a campaign whereby we're going to have 2 primary armies that are going to crush forts. They're going to collapse in and they're going to take forts, starting with the border forts. This one being safer than this one because this one may be reinforced by the force in the cracklands. So the force collapsing on this fortress is the biggest I can put together. It's big enough that it can handle the entire Urukian army if it decides to move and patrol, and if not, it will certainly crack the fort in one turn. It's a mixture of, I think, several hundred slaves. I think it's close to 300 Hatun Runa, and then 30, 90, 110 sacreds with enough mage support. The mage support is basically divine blessing and then a mixture of strength of giants from the earth mages and sermon of courage. The strength of giants is there to help them beat these sacreds if they come in and patrol, because at half damage and high HP with a repel spear and high defense and high prot, it's actually quite slow to kill Maidens of the Moon, and they'll one-hit the units they're punching back at, because Nazcan Sacreds have no defensive capability whatsoever other than numbers, DPS, and a relatively high defense score. So one major force collapsing there, a second major force with, I think, 95 Sacreds and another 40, 80, 120, 150, 180, and then so about 200 chaff. The reason we're bringing the chaff is both to make those surrounds cleaner, so that we actually get full surrounds when we do large drops, and to take hits and casualties while the Sacreds do the killing, because as long as Sacreds get surface area, it's to their benefit if the rest of the surface area is filled with something else that's going to suck up the attacks, which Hatun Runa will, and because Hatun Runa contribute 2 siege strength each. So I don't care how much siege defense giants put up, these fortifications have 300 wall integrity, and we're bringing to the fight 400 slaves at 2 is 800 siege power. So you don't even need the condors to crack the forts at that point. And then when you storm the fortress, we can array the Hatun Runa out front. They'll take the arrows and limit that sort of sling arrow cost on our condors, which we saw earlier. So that's the primary thrust of that initial attack. And then we have 5 raiding groups going in. So this force is going to bringing one force forward from here, which is Sinchi. This is 24 Sacreds, 25 Hatun Runa. They can't reinforce this province, so that will comfortably kill PD. And this will also bring him closer to the front so he can serve as a surprise reinforcement next turn, because at that point they'll be denied reconnaissance on those provinces. Then we have a mixture of Lancers and Hatun Runa. Lancers, but more Lancers this time, and Hatun Runa. And down here, Lancers and Hatun Runa. Those 3 scout groups guarantee that we catch this Mashu here. And if you look at what a Mashu is, it is a 280 gold, quite impressive mage. Quite dangerous to us if it's properly supported, but it won't be properly supported. So we're going to go kill the Mashu, whether it's here or whether it retreats. We're going to take this province here too. This here is the smallest force I'm sending because it's risky, because it's hypothetically possible they guess and move up here. I don't think they will, but it's possible they guess and move up here. Then on this flank, we're sending another 60 person. So 60 person is the standard. I would prefer to be using the 80 commander so they had +1 morale, so these guys had better leadership, but unfortunately I don't have one spare there, so this is going to be a raid there. If it's all it is militia and PD will win. If anyone doubles back, they'll die, and I won't care. The Sapaya are going for a more valuable target here. So you can see there is a temple, there is Encies, and there is a fortification under construction here. So I'm of 2 minds. I could allow the fortress to be taken and then inherit the free infrastructure later, but for the purpose of keeping this campaign rapid and cheap, I'm going to move in and deny him that fortress then, because then I can deny him the production that would come from it. I can wreck that temple. I can maybe catch some good leaders that are there building it, and maximize surprise. Our scouts, meanwhile, will filter out, position themselves to finally cover this area that we can't see, which means we'll then have awareness for where this jumps next turn. So hopefully we'll have these 2 units in the enemy backline that can then harass at will, probably jumping out this way, but we'll jump depending on where the enemy is weak and continue trying to draw his forces away while we take his economy apart. If this works, then we'll deny the enemy 7 provinces on turn 1. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, I lie. 8. 8 provinces on turn 1, which is not bad. It's a significant fraction of the Urukian Empire. Denies him 2 of his 5 forts, I believe, in terms of production, and of course denied production of this other one, which would make me really annoyed if I was a player and under this attack, but there's no reason for us to hold back. Meanwhile, we'll be streaming reinforcements, so newly built sacred groups. So there's one group moving from here with 31 sacreds moving to the front and 74 slaves. And we're also bringing just generic reinforcement groups forward as well with just Hatun Runa. So this is 160 additional slaves that we are moving forward, and we'll just continue producing leaders in these areas, a mixture of leaders and mages to move these guys forward. As it is, with our revenue going up, we're producing double leaders here. They'll be necessary to collect, to go through the capital and these provinces and collect slaves. So I'll filter through and collect them. We'll also be bringing in additional reinforcements here as the slaves are produced and pull up. We'll recruit these leaders here, and they'll take a mixture of lancers, as you can see, and slaves that are being produced. In the meantime, they'll patrol or join these raiding groups, which is what the current set are doing. Other than that, so we're going to help Machaca in the Solarian War. If I had sacreds in the area, I would send them, but unfortunately I do not. And even then, I'd question, because the program we're thinking about is sending guys in and only being on one province at a time, which means if we have a rout, we will lose everything. But we're sending in a unit of Hatun Runa as siege chaff, and we're going to move more forward, so another 80. And the goal there will be to produce a ball with maybe 400 siege strength, that if Machaca is able to seize an area and advance beyond a Solarian fortress, but can't break the Solarian fortress, we can jump on it, crack the walls, and then jump off it so they can come on with the walls already broken and assault it. Because with this pygmy-based force, I doubt Machaca is going to have an easy time cracking walls. Great time winning battles, terrible time cracking walls. So we'll provide aid there. It's risky, we'll lose some units, we're getting nothing out of it except for helping a friend, but that's fine. And we'll keep a close eye on the Shinu-Yamen and Phacian conflict with Urmor, and see what comes out of that. So that is this turn. We will see. We will see. We'll throw the dice, Alia Jacta Est, and we will see what happens next turn in turn 24. Alright, yet again onto the breach, turn 24. We'll go quickly through events and then we'll jump into the war, because our mercenary service war against Uruk has begun truly, and that's really the highlight of this turn. So quickly, death basketing gold from Man. Man is still under siege but holds a few provinces, and they're emptying their coffers because there's nothing more they can produce. We've done construction 1, going on construction 2. Tianchi has claimed the Crystal Throne. We'll come back to that in future turns because it's significant that we now know what throne that is. We cast Dark Knowledge. We did that because we noticed death scales in Pythium, and that's here in Questria on this province, which unfortunately means everything we recruit here will get diseased. Sure, it's an extra death gem, but would rather that not have been there. But we noticed the death scales, and we did it. And then let's look at these battles through the strategic map instead. I preferred the strategic map to the events list. So let's have a look at the stage of the Urukian War. And what you'll instantly see is that the majority of our targets were successful. This broad western sweep went perfectly, whereas this eastern sweep a little harder, and the central punch perfectly. So let's work west to east and then do an overall appraisal of what we're doing next. So Belfields. This was a moderate-sized raiding group, Lancers and Hatun Runa, that we jumped in, and we found the prize of this entire thing. We found the Mashu Mashu. And the Mashu Mashu and the gold from this province was really the goal. And what you're going to see here is my standard raiding script, wherein the Hatun Runa are going to jump and try and stall whatever is close by. So they're going to jump on that knight and hold them up, while the Lancers charge to the back. Now they have some trouble because this guy is liquid body and ethereal, but at the end of the day, without protection, enough attacks, you're eventually going to get him. So he's dead. Meanwhile, the Hatun Runa have killed, through numbers, killed the one heavy cavalryman, and now having a very fair fight with the militia. The Lancers can come back here and clean up the rest of the commanders. And we're done. Great. I'm not sure if anything routed off at Belfields. Let's just check Belfields. No, it didn't. So we just lost 2 spearmen and 3 Hatun Runa. We killed an important mage, province defense, and seized a province worth 50 income. I like it. Also, there's a Windspire here. So, haha, up to 9 air gems a month. That's the strict break-even point on Condor summoning. So that's a magical point. It's turn 24. We finally made it. We're no longer diplomatically reliant on anybody to keep steady-state Condor summoning. Behemoth's Rest, we jumped in with a larger raiding group because it was regarded as low risk and we needed to move these troops forward, and there was nothing here but PD. So you can imagine how that went. Minimal losses, 80 income. Vache, 177. There was a lava lake here, which is 2 gems per turn that we've taken from Uruk. Again, we jumped in a raider group. Similar setup. The Hatun Runa will jump and stall whatever in the PD is actually dangerous, while the Lancers will go back and they will kill the commander. In this case, okay, so attack rear doesn't always work perfectly. In that case, they got distracted and they jumped closer, but it didn't matter because it was just PD. So yeah, attack rear is not perfectly reliable, but we'll take it. So the western flank of this operation went perfectly with minimal losses. We've denied a volcano, arena. So this is a good province. So we've denied 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gems per turn and 50, 130, 160 income, and it would actually have been more than that because the unrest goes up when you conquer a province. So that is good. That's a good amount of damage done for absolutely minimal losses, and we killed an expensive mage. The eastern flank punch we'll talk about next. So the Urukian army pulled back, and this gives us a chance to see what the Urukian forces can be like. So you can see here, this is a raiding force, and then this is a giant blob of archers and militia being used to defend the commander. Defend a commander and a mage. So the NC is a mage commander. And then some decoy commanders, a decoy Enkidu commander and a warrior at the back. So this is to bait attack rear. These archers are positioned to defend the real commander. And the line of sacreds is here to butcher whatever we have on attack closest. And what you'll see is we jump in and we can't do anything. We can't do anything. So this is 14 attack, 15 defense, blunt resist, so temper flesh basically, so half damage, 17 prot, regen 10. There is no way a Hatun Runa can kill these guys, and they are absolutely capable of butchering us. So I think for virtually no loss in Ulfia, they destroy one of our raiding groups. Yeah, we killed 4 Enkidu archers and 3 Enkidu iron warriors. That's what, 60... let's call them all 20 gold to average it out. Let's 4, 5, 6, 7, 140 gold up against 170, 200 gold. So actually not terrible gold exchange rate, horribly, only because I call Hatun Runa 1 gold rather than 5, because that's what that works out as if you're capturing them as slaves and just paying maintenance. I'm probably too harsh on my evaluation of Hatun Runa. They're probably slightly more than 1 gold to capture. But anyway, this was not a disaster, but it proves that we can't beat him. So wherever this force goes, it creates a bubble of risk around itself where we have to not move anywhere except for insignificant force. The Sapphire came in and took this province almost without loss. It has 1 nature gem. We denied him the fortress. We burned down the temple. But at the time we came in, the expensive mage had retreated and he just left a Gudu, presumably to build a lab if the fort went up, and the Enkidu commander was presumably building the fortress. So we didn't really snag much in that battle. In the central area, there was very little they could... we were looking at mostly like small amounts of fort province defense, but it gives us a chance to see the sort of armies that Nazca is putting out at this point. This is... I'll admit, an unconventional number of Hatun Runa. I'm using an unconventional number of Hatun Runa because I think the numbers say I should. I think the numbers say this is a very good approach to winning the game, producing very large numbers of these with the capture slave action. Anyway, we drop Strength of Giants, we drop when we kill everyone. We're throwing some fireballs from the Incas, but it doesn't really matter much. This is an even bigger army in Xanthrast. You see this big chunk of please throw evos at me, and because they're multiples per the same multiple per square as the condors, they're less attractive because the condors have more HP, but they're still closer, which means the mages and archers think they have better precision. So anyway, and we can throw these fireballs because they'll kill Hatun Runa, I don't care, but they are less likely to kill high HP 10 fire resistant condors. So we took both these provinces, both of them are cracked, we're storming both of them. and we took the swamp. The swamp had a haunted village, 1 death gem, I'll take it. So, phase 1 successful. Ulm decided, and they only told me now, to wait an extra turn to bring up more mercenaries and men to make sure this assault goes well. I actually think they did it to, hope that this army moves back to fight me so they can take man without contest, which is probably what would happen. I would divert my forces to fight Nazca rather than Ulm if I was Uruk, if for nothing else then because Ulm is very good at fighting me and Nazca doesn't want to fight me in a fair fight, so if I can bring some serious armies together, then I have a chance. So phase 1, we were successful in most of our territory, losses were strongly in our favour. We're positioned well to now collapse those fortresses and continue with our manoeuvre war strategy. However, there are a couple of concerns. The first is their armies escaped, none of their armies were drawn into the point of destruction in that first turn, particularly the large numbers of sacreds, and there's a second group forming down here. The second thing is we finally found their god, and their god is safe in a fortress. Now, their god isn't vulnerable right now, but they could, with magic and gear, turn their god into a threat. So we would like to get eyes on their god, preferably by having it hit one of our raid groups, and see whether or not it's a threat. We can't kill it at the wrong time or it'll respawn. Luckily, we're now in spring, so we're clear to kill it any time from now for about the next 6 turns without it being a waste. But we need eyes on to confirm what sort of threat it is before we hit it. So what we're doing is we're bringing one of our smaller raid groups over here. Smallest commitment I can manage to take 169, because I imagine what will happen is the god will move here or here to create either with a view to counterattacking or to consolidating around Uruk. We're consolidating out, sorry, 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, we'll send a small commitment force there, and then it's a question of hitting as many provinces as we can where we don't think that they will send significant forces. So, what are those targets? This Supplier group, which is really quite valuable and is good to fight anything except for the Sacreds. They'll fight Iron Warriors just fine. It'll be grindy, but Ethereal protects them and they'll eventually shock weapon them down. But they won't fight as well against these high MR geared up Sacreds that can regen through a lot of the damage and whatnot. So we're going to jump them over here to Lish. Lish is a good target because we don't think the Sacreds will go backwards. We don't think they'll fall back. We think they'll come together and try and consolidate in order to meet us in the field, which is the correct decision. Even if they pinch off this group here, it would require walking around, and they can't cross this river, so they need to come around through here, which would give us some warning. So very little chance of being ambushed. And if they move the Iron Warriors up, they'll probably move here, but if they move there, we'll fight them. What this allows us to do is then deny the water provinces. Don't know how valuable they are, but we can just jump in there very safely and deny these provinces, and then jump out of the water at will to make all of this a threatened space. This is really your Supplier, the amphibiousness of your Supplier serving as a sort of a force multiplier. They'll tie down much larger numbers of enemies than they themselves constitute by being a significant threat. I love it. And I would cherish the opportunity to get more of them, but we just don't have the resources at the moment to get more. We're recruiting Koya at the moment because we desperately need the magic diversity that Koya provide, as well as the mobility that Koya provide with that magic diversity. We have enough sacred groups at this point. We're moving another one out this turn, similar design as always. And that will reclaim this fortress here. So we'll raid this province here, we'll take this one, we'll move down here because we don't think it's likely that the Uruk would move from there to here, because to do so denies them a path back into their empire quickly and leaves them open to being pinned with Ulm here and us around here. So it's more likely that they'll move back to here, which is why we're not going there. So we'll raid 164, deny them that. If they don't retake this province, we can even trace income. Perfectly fine by me, and we'll find out, we'll get some intelligence on whether or not there are gems there, so we know whether or not Ulm's getting a good deal by eventually taking it, because it's almost inevitable Ulm will eventually hold this province. So target 1, target 2, target 3 is this swamp. We're bringing Sacreds in, which means if they bring forces up, we have a reasonable chance of taking them on the collapse. 30 Sacreds and a whole bunch of Chaff and Lancers gives us a relatively good chance. I'm willing to take that risk. I don't think they're going to move all of their armies up to the swamp, but they might, and if they do, I reckon we can give them a good run for their money. And I'll take that conflict because it would then significantly attrit these armies and allow the ones that took the fortresses to then jump forward and basically play merry havoc. Because if they're here, they have a limited number of options as to where to go. We have reinforcements coming in from every direction. We can cover most of their escape options and possibly destroy them. We're also bringing some chaff and some sacreds in to take cracklands, because there is a chance that this army, but not this army, so you can assess that it would only be this force here, this Ulfir force, could come up here and fight us in cracklands. We would meet it with about 115 odd units, 115, 117 units, of whom only 22 are sacred, but some of them are the very good, high damage, reasonable stat sacreds. These guys will do 22 damage before Strength of Giants, which unfortunately we don't have on this force, and the Condor Warriors have the penetration bonus of being piercing damage. So we'll do something here if they come up and fight us, but I don't expect them to make a big fuss over this province here. I expect, at this point, I expect either consolidation or a concerted counterattack. We're ready for the concerted counterattack and we're ready for consolidation. Either way, we'll deny them these two fortresses. That will allow us to do a gem reload, start forward recruiting and move forward. In the meantime, we're just going to continue piping reinforcements forward. We've jumped into Machaka. We have to wait for a turn because it's currently snowy. It will cease to be snowy soon. We can't reach this Solarian province. Now, Machaka's dominion, which is here, is heat, and we're coming into mid-spring. So this province should hit warm, so should this one next turn, and once they both hit warm, we can make that jump into Solaria. So we'll just patrol for one turn, and then jump over and start doing our part in the Solarian War. Other than that, site searching, movement. Shinoyama has moved on to Ashdod and managed to put it under siege, while Ermor went past them to Shem. Now this army is mostly long deads and lictors. That's a big lictor force, which means they're probably in a good place to fight a whole bunch of Dai Bakemono. Let's see what happened. Oh yeah. Ignore the Nazca v Shinoyama. It was just me sending in an Apu to Suicide Scout. So this is a force that's got a Bakemono Sorcerer, a bunch of Bakemono, Dai Bakemono Archers. Like this is just it's a decent force. There's some supporting mages that can presumably cast Dust to Dust or something. And they just killed the province defense relatively easily. So this dance is continuing. This Shinoyaman army needs to dodge, because I don't think it can fight this number of lictors. It needs to consolidate and get more mage support and move, and hopefully that happens. We'll communicate with Shinoyama about that one, because I think they identify the risk of the lictors, but we just need to make sure that no fight happens there if we can avoid it. So that's turn 24. Phase 1 is going fine. Phase 2 is to do more of the same. Use our maneuver elements to throw Uruk off balance, to keep their armies jumping around and to deny them the economy they need to meet us in battle, while our big forces crush centres of resistance, namely the two northern fortresses, which will then give us options, because we'll then have mobility over their capital, and once you can threaten their capital, that'll hopefully pin most Urukian armies to their capital as a final point of resistance. And maybe we can pinch off their god if it moves out. So that was turn 24. See you next turn. Okay, yet again unto the breach, turn 25, also known as the second month of our offensive against Uruk. And what I want to do this turn is we'll go through events as normal, we'll go through the battles and the conduct of the war and where we're going to take the war next. And then I want to stop and reflect on the logistics system I'm setting up, because I want to be sure, looking back later, that I've done this properly. And I think it's easy to when you're focusing on the tactical and operational parts of a war, to forget about the logistics that sits behind it, that's going to ensure that we're keeping the war supplied, that we're keeping the war going, and keeping our forces moving forward in the most turn and gold economical way possible. So, trade activity is normal. The last of man's gold before they fall. We're also trading gems from Ulm, doing a little bit of research. No magic sites found. Okay. Let's talk about the war, because if you recall from last turn, our initial strikes had been to pick up as many Urukian territories as possible and then to crack these fortresses. So, to that end, we assaulted 2 fortresses this turn. The Xanthrast was considered was where the majority, like the larger of our forces was. The other one was not small by any means. And what we had here was some Gurus, and then basically PD. Oh, and a couple of Naditu. So the Naditu is a relatively cheap, efficient S1 slave / research mage. So I'm happy to be wiping out a good cluster of these. These take away research capacity, and if they're hurriedly at this point researching counters to us, whatever those may be, spells that they believe will counter us, it's good to take out the research core at this point. So we dropped Strength of Giants, dropped in, and killed everything. We've got a couple of Sapphire who can stab them through the walls because they treat this as not an impediment. Everyone else has to climb up. So the Sapphire are actually good if they can get in base-to-base contact at helping to clear the walls. The Fireballs coming in, good when they're precise, not so much otherwise. So that was Xanthrast, and the total Butcher's bill at Xanthrast was we lost 1 Spearman, 5 Hatun Runa, and 1 valuable Sapphire, which is that's unfortunate. But hey, we killed 7 Naditus, a Guru, an Enkidu commander, 14 archers, and we seized the fortress. I won't mention slave casualties unless they're particularly significant. We also sieged 2 Owlquills and raised the temple, obviously. The Owlquills are valuable. The Owlquills to us are very, very useful. 2 Owlquills is basically the same as getting another research mage for us, because they only put out a relatively small number of RP each. This is a big boost, and you don't pay maintenance on it, which is very important with the Nazcan economy. The other fortress we stormed turned out to have a larger garrison. So this is the fortress of Kark. Again, Hatun Runa Sacreds. And here we actually had these guys, Enchantresses, or ladies rather. So this is an Enchantress province, which is great because this gives you nature and a whole bunch of other randoms. These are good, capable mages, but unfortunately they've got them here to defend. And along with them, they had a Mashu Mashu with gems and a reasonable group of Iron Warriors who are here to bait the attack rear charge and give these guys time to empty all of these nature gems, and I'm betting this is just going to be a huge amount of swarm. Now, that would be a problem, except for the fact that I brought more chaff than even swarm can counter. So we kill the bugs, and then once the Hatun Runa go up, you'll see, look, this is an impressive amount of chaff that they're putting out, but we have so much stuff that we can drop close, clear, drop rear, clear, and lawnmower through these mages, which is what the Sacreds are now doing. The Iron Warriors are doing their best to fend us off, but we're still able to do damage, and we can clear out these, sure, there's a square of 6 like random bugs, but they have low defense skills and no hit points. So hypothetically, a square of Condor can clear out a square and a half of swarm chaff relatively quickly. And, if the Hatun Runa have to do it, it's slower, but they can still do it. We've got enough of them. So the swarm that would have clogged up the gate against most people doesn't work against us because we have just so many units and they're flyers. So flyers really are amazing at assaulting fortresses. There's no way around it. The bird civilizations are weaker in a stand-up fight because they have fewer units per square. They tend to be less armor. They tend to do less damage. But they are peerless fort takers. So in Kark, we lost 3 Condors and a Sun Guard. So 4 units that were worth anything, 16 Hatun Runa and 2 Spearmen to kill 3 Enchantresses, Mashu Mashu, 3 Naditus, and then a whole bunch of random, some good troops and some random crap that they had summoned up. This is an amazing exchange rate, and we were on the offense against a fortress, and this just speaks to the fact that when you bring enough flyers, when you have enough of an outnumbering advantage, your loss curve completely shifts from you losing multiple units for every one of the enemies to you suddenly killing them efficiently. And it helps that we have this huge core of Sacreds that are just so killy to help cut that enemy force down before they can do significant damage to us. And the Hatun Runa suck up most of the enemy attacks. We found another Owlquill. Great. Now, this was hampered by the fact that if you look at random event in Kark, a huge barbarian horde has attacked the province. So we stormed it, and then immediately, because you can't set patrols the same turn you stormed, had barbarians besiege it, which is unfortunate because it means this core here, I say core because it's composed of 3 main primary divisions and we'll call it 1 support division in pure Hatun Runa, is not available to advance this turn, which means we can't do what I was hoping to do and jump both these forces forward. So we'll talk about that in terms of what we do next. Elsewhere, We jumped they didn't retake this province at Star Peaks. We jumped the Sapphire over. We took Lish. We're not going to draw income from it because it's not linked to a fort, but we have denied them Lish, and we're going to jump in the water and deny them these as well. Very important. Raided over here successfully. Haunted Woods. I don't think we caught anything. Nope. Deer Tribe Archers. Like, we didn't catch anything of note. Took Cracklands and Snake Swamps. I don't think either of those were of note. Nope. And nope. Both of these we just picked off province defense and took the provinces. Now, Snake Swamps may not be high income, but it's got 2 earth and 1 nature income, which is good. Cracklands is basically worthless, but at least it closes up our front and removes their movement options, which allows us to prevent a force, breaking into our rear lines and lets us maintain the offensive initiative. They retook Vache. We didn't make any effort to hold it. That's fine. They retook it with their god. So their eyes on their god, and let's have a look. Because what was important to us was seeing what was the equipment and scripting status of the god, and the answer is it's just Shambler Skin Armor. Now, this air breathing is actually important because my smite spell is useful in that it causes the target to start drowning. A water breather can't drown. So this makes him immune to my Holy Threes throwing out high damage smite spells. So does 21 magic resistance. Now, it's weakened, chest wounded, and limping, so it's not particularly mobile or devastating, but it never was in the first place. It's still tanky, it's still scary. So if we can intercept it before it can get to a fortress, we will, but we won't take too many risks in attempting to do so. So we've identified where it is, which is good. Which means, ideally, I would have liked to drop on the capital knowing that it couldn't be there this turn. But unfortunately, this unit has to break out. Nothing we can do about that. One loss was that we attacked Eden with our smallest raiding force, and they moved an army here. So with Nazca, you have to understand, or any flyers, I suppose, if you're using this strategy I am, of throwing out very large numbers of small, cost-efficient raiding groups to just make your enemy's life miserable, if they do choose to commit a full army to a place where you're sending a raiding force, you're going to lose the raiding force. So quite smartly here, the PD stands at the front, the Sacred's at the back, and we just get wiped out. So, in the Forest of Iden, we lose 25 spearmen, so 250 gold, 260 gold. We kill nothing. The rest retreat. That's okay. That's the nature of war. That forces them to move these units to counter these raids. If they didn't commit there, we would have taken the province. And because they committed there, they didn't commit anywhere else, and we took those provinces. So we're squarely holding the initiative in this war. The question then becomes, what are our next steps? And because this fort is under siege, and because we're in a position to bring so many more reinforcements forward, we're not going to strike at the capital this turn. It would be tempting to strike at that capital, but there is a risk that this comes in, they patrol, and if we're going in half-baked, we may have very large casualties. If there's enough mages here throwing some good spells, and they spend gems, and they have enough sacreds, we're looking at a casualty rate that could possibly blunt our offensive. And we don't want that. There's no reason to have that. We'll break this siege here, and we'll move in and we'll start trying to continue. We'll start continuing what we've done, but on a whole nother level. So we're aiming for Ulfia with a large army. This isn't a raid. This is a big outflanking force. And what this does is it introduces doubt into our enemy's mind. From Ulfia, we have range on Tiny Willow, Klon, Rame, Uruk. So the capital will be under threat. And as long as the capital is under threat, they're going to have to keep troops around the capital. They can't afford to throw it away. But we're also going to threaten this throne. And because we're threatening this throne, we may either draw some troops back, or if everything concentrates on the capital, we can knock it out. And if we knock that out, we secure the throne, which is very valuable to us, and we reduce their productive capacity again. Uruk started this war with 5 forts and 1 under construction for a potential production total of 6. 2 have fallen. The 1 under construction has been knocked off, and we're starting to undermine the resource feed into the capital. That's what these attacks are also serving the purpose of doing. We're dropping another big army here on Klon. Klon has range on Endron. So if the armies consolidate towards Uruk, then we can strip them of 166. At that point, they are a one fort nation, and all of my concerns about attrition and then being able to produce units that trade effectively with us ceases to be a problem. So, large army attack on Ulfia, large army attack on Clon. These are aimed at maintaining the initiative, placing more of the enemy's rear lines under threat, and basically controlling and coaching their movements, preventing them from counter-pushing us. This raiding force and a whole bunch of other ones are coming together to give it a little bit more of a punch to Rame. We might catch this army here moving here, but it's also possible it just sits and defends. I don't think the god has enough movement points to get there. I think the god will have to go here. But we're not going to try and catch it because it could equally also go to Endron and be perfectly safe, which is, would be an entirely reasonable move. So it's not worth the risk. We're going to take Rame, try and pick off a few troops. If these guys come back as well, we'll lose these raiders, but at that point, I'm actually quite happy with that positioning. We can roll this province up, and we'll probably at that point commit to a tiny Willow offensive, and then one more turn after that, we'll see which way this force then goes, right or left, and whichever way they go, our forces can collapse the other, and we'll strip them down to one fort. So, those are those raids. We're going to clean up this lake, and we're just piping more units forward as well. So, we've got fresh army, so this was the recruitment line from last turn, plus all the slave captures. We've got even more than we can take with us, which will, once we have a patrol leader, we will. Pulling 80 units forward from there, streaming more reinforcements forward under human leadership, so this includes some of the crossbows and Hoburg crossbows that we've been recruiting, so we've got a little bit of range firepower, plus more slave troops. They're going to come up, they're going to garrison this fortress, and just fill it with siege defense, so that our other troops can move on. In the interim, we've got Orkak Tapak here with 80 siege defense, which is enough to hold up the walls for a turn. They probably won't bring 300 siege strength under any circumstance. And then can consolidate, hand over some troops, decide who's advancing and go from there. And of course, from the capital, we've got troops moving forward, so we don't need any more Inca at this point. We've got enough Inca. What we need to do is get the new sacreds that are being produced and some slaves to the front. So Amaru Kusi and the other leaders we produce will stream through, pick up sacreds in the capital, and stream them west. We'll talk about that at the end, because that's really speaks to the logistical system that I'm setting up here to help sustain this offensive even as we start to take losses. But you can already see we have more troops now than when we started. In the northeast, Shinoyama has been repelled. Ashdod has retaken here. I'm not sure if Shinoyama dodged or came back and were destroyed here. Either way, there's no evidence that Ermor is immediately going to counterattack them, but I would be concerned if I was Shinoyama, and I am just concerned in general. So I will have to see what I can do about that in order to make sure Shinoyama is safe from the undead. That said, I also have my obligations to Ermor that even though I'm worried about their strategic strength, I have to honour those. Kalem, however, looks like they're beating the crap out of Asphodel, and that's probably going to continue. This is worrying. I'll talk to Smokey and see what's going to happen there, but we should be aware of that. What's interesting to me is this effectively means that Kalem has cut off Tianxi from expanding in this direction. And if Asphodel's land is not dead yet, this is Kalem basically guaranteeing that they will get the benefits, not TC. So TC will have to make a decision as to their expansion target. They could try and get in on the Scalarian War. They could try and attack Shinoyama, I suppose, or move against Vanarus. It'll be interesting to see which direction they go. Different threat profiles depending on where they go. Vanheim is besieging Bandar Log. Our scout will go on there this turn. It also looks like Vanarus sees this fortress, and this gives us an insight into how dangerous an early game Vanarushian stack, well, early mid game Vanarushian stack can be. So you've got a mixture of a whole bunch of Chudhirmen, and you've got some Sacred Oathbound who are not yet blessed. But there we go. Okay, so they throw up Storm. Bandar Log is throwing these Sacred Apsaras in. Now, the problem with the Apsaras is, while they are ore, these ones aren't blessed, and they have Prot 1. So these Hirdmen are just going to, and Berserkers are just going to go chop, 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 choppity chop. And here come the Thunderstrike. So this big group of Bandar Warriors, light Bandar Warriors. Light Bandar Warriors are pretty tough. They have hit points. They're in 2 per square. Average stats, hit nice and hard. Throw rocks. And there's this big mage core at the back, which is doing Mind Burn. The problem is these are very... So Vanarushian troops are very killy. They're almost all dual wielders. Some of them are berserkers. The Sacreds aren't dual wielders, but the other troops he's brought are, which means they do lawnmower through things. In the tradition of Ulm, and this big core of sages back here with Storm and Storm Power are fully capable of throwing Thunderstrike. They also have lighter than... I'm pretty sure Bandar's thrown lighter than Northern Star to make the mind burns less exhausting. But it's not going to be enough against the relatively high MR, so +1 MR, that's good, and 13 MR for the Sacreds. That's a good score. Few of these berserkers come in, start fighting with the Bandar, and you notice they actually do a pretty good job. You can see mind burns bouncing off them as they chop their way through. They're about to kill the Bandar Noble. Thunderstrikes come in whenever the sages wake up from their nap, and then the unstoppable group of Vanarushians comes in and starts massacring the mages. The others have already run, but of course it's a fort, so running means you die. So in total, in the Sleepy Vold, they lost 12 Heerdmen and a small collection of other units in exchange for 52 Light Bandar Warriors, Fort PD, 6 Holy Asrapas, 8 Yogis, which are only 55 gold, but they still take a mage turn to recruit, a Rishi, which is a 320 gold super mage, a Guru, which is a 160, and a Bandar Noble. So that hurts. That's probably a significant chunk of, what Bandar Log had left that's been killed. The rest will be in Bandar Log itself, and we'll get to see what happens there. But Vanarus has taken their pound of flesh. I expect them to take that as well. And then we're going to try and see if we can get them in on the Scalarian War to support our friends Machaka. Speaking of which, whoops. So we didn't communicate well enough with Machaka that we needed to wait a turn for the Ice to Thaw. I think I asked the question about movement, but didn't explicitly say, so we're going to have to sit as opposed to go back and then come back and go in. Assumption is the mother of all stuff-ups, and this was a stuff-up. So they moved an army onto us of pygmies. I'm not going to look at it, it was too painful. So yeah, pygmies came in, we dropped and murdered all the pygmies, but then we routed, and because we're surrounded, we lost all our slaves. So all our slaves are dead. All that's left is the Apu, who's going to go home in shame and collect more slaves, and there's another group here. They'll eventually group up, and we'll see if we can go through Ulm or something and provide support as promised, but not a promising start. So, final commentary. What is this logistical system I'm talking about? Logistics, for me, is about producing and streaming units to a place where they're useful as quickly and efficiently as possible so you can actually use them in the deciding battles on the front. So what we've been taken to doing is when we start to build up infrastructure in an area, the first thing you get is a fort, and it's not initially usually labbed and templed to the point where you can produce mages. In that initial state where it's not labbed and templed, you produce Apu. The Apu then commits suicide, and you start establishing a slave capturing core there. This means that fort will then have a constant trickle of new troops every turn. Once you're labbed and templed, you can switch over to producing research mages, Arclus. That's sort of my default because I need research. I'm now producing 200 research a turn. That's pretty crap, but it's something, and you need to do it. So you transition over, maybe occasionally pausing to produce additional leaders. Once you're in a war zone, a critical point, you alternate between 2 recruits. You can be producing the Apu Squipe, and the job of that unit is to pick up the hordes of units that you are capturing. So that's 1 turn of captures plus, I think, 2 turns of production. Actually, no, it's 2 turns of both. Anyway, to pick those up, form new raiding groups, and jump forward and harass the enemy. This is particularly useful, these forward forts, and it's why it's helpful that you establish the slave capturing centers at each fortress as you go forward, because it moves your production centers forward by producing a new slave corps. Now you can continue to fly them from your center, and you will because you can move 2 provinces a turn, but it's helpful to have more at the front. They can also create patrol groups when you're at peace or you don't need them. The other unit you can be recruiting in areas that are important is the Huron, because the Huron is a useful combat mage, and as a useful combat mage, you want them researching near the front so that when you need them, they're there and you can pull them out in 1 or 2 turns. They have 20 movement points. You can move them a reasonable distance, usually 3 provinces rather than 2 that you get if there are Hatun Runa involved. So you want to recruit them at the front. Then I basically just set up a streaming system. I try and time it so that every 2 or 3 turns, every fort has some commanders either produced or arrived so they can pick up the extras, move out and become either patrol groups or raiding groups, or reinforce the losses in the primary divisions. Primary divisions are those units, those forces that are led by Inca and sometimes some attached battle mages, and consist of a mixture of slaves and sacreds. They sometimes have additional commanders attached for additional siege strength and additional chaffing, made up entirely of Hatun Runa. So that's what a division is. You group multiple together, and I'm thinking of multiple groups of those together as a core. The other part of this reinforcement scheme is that every turn I'm producing condors and sacreds at the capital. Every 1 to 2 turns, you need to have a leader piped in from somewhere else, because you don't want to produce leaders in the capital, because that's wasteful of your command points, so another fort has to do it, to fly in, grab them, and do exactly what we're doing here, start ferrying them forward so that they can join the battle too. And this will help sustain our, replace our losses, keep our forces strong. And what you can see in the score graphs at the moment is that even though we are at war and are taking losses, our forces still grow every turn, because we're increasing the pace at which we summon things. Now, we're also increasing our income steadily, and our gem income too, as we take provinces, and we're seizing new forts. So all of that is going in our favour, but the key is to keep our army not just increasing, but also to keep it moving towards the front, because troops sitting in forts are a great irk of mine, and it really irks me in Dominions when people have large armies behind the front that aren't really doing anything. Like, for example, this one, which spawned by event. Here we are. A band of renegade shrimp soldiers have recruited into service. So we've got 2 crab generals who I'll take on land, but these are shrimp soldiers here. I've got 39 of them. They cost 8 gold per year in upkeep, and they're freaking aquatic. They will live out the rest of this game on freaking welfare benefits in Nuptia, guarding the province against who knows what. So there's a few PD there. If there's a random event, they'll kill it, but that's an expensive force that's going to sit there and do absolutely bloody nothing. Anyway. So that's what we're doing in terms of logistics. We've now converted all of these into... Pythium's fortresses are now fully productive. These ones are being upgraded and being labbed and templed and coming online. So these will become mage centres as well. And in the meantime, they're building up their Mulki stocks. Other than that, we will persist, as I said, with our blitz against Uruk. 2 turns in, we've seized, I think, 2 fortresses and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7... 8, 9, 10, 11. I may have miscounted. I think it's about 10. We've seized like 10 or 11 provinces from Uruk, and we've reduced their production capacity from potential 6 forts down to 3. So I consider ourselves successful so far. We've lost some raiding forces. They've lost some big mages and some troops and some fortresses and a lot of gems. So we're doing well. We just need to move really quickly before other people intervene. We need to make sure that Vanheim doesn't step in. I've secured a non-aggression pact with Vanheim, which prevents them from attacking me, but it doesn't prevent them attacking Uruk. So we need to move really quickly to secure our goals here, particularly Tiny Willow. We'll need to move soon. I'm glad we got Lish, but we just need to get a force to jump down here and secure that as well. So that's that. That's turn 25. I'll see you in turn 26. I don't think there's anything else. Oh yeah, one other interesting thing that's going on. Backup plan. So if the god does make it to Edron, the god might equip itself. If the god equips itself, the god is particularly dangerous. It jumps to being really dangerous. In particular, I'm worried about if it's properly armoured and has a brand or some sort of area of effect weapon, combined with its inbuilt Vine Shield, its ability to buff itself, it might become very difficult for our Sacred Swarms to kill. The backup plan we've done is we're producing a number of black bows of Boltulf. These are bows which... so it's just an ordinary longbow. It's relatively precise. You get 12 shots, 45 range. And if you damage the target, which you usually will, if you're lucky, it is piercing, thankfully, and it's going to ignore any invulnerability. So let's hope they don't arm themselves too much. It'll feeble mind the target. There's no MR check on that, just feeble minds the target, takes away their magic, which will remove the god's ability to buff. It means we'll probably lose the first battle we encounter it, but we'd win the second. And the plan is to give these to Uklas, which with our new Alteration 1 and Thaumaturgy 1 research now complete, can cast aim, advance 3 times, and then fire at large enemies. And that will cause them to buff their precision, to get close to the god, fire their bows until they're empty at the god, and hopefully feeble-mind it. So, in the event that all goes wrong, we will already have the counter. And this speaks to the fact that in Dominions, you need to anticipate the threats that might come out and make sure that you have counters ready or at least in production, so that the time the enemy gains from pushing you back when they reveal a tool that you don't have a counter to, you minimize that time. You minimize the amount of time you're on the back foot. So I hope to have at least a hillbilly solution to a super combatant Titan chassis ready if indeed one appears. So that's turn 25. See you in turn 26.